Hello, YouTube. I'm on the chapter 24, Innocent Diary of a King. In this chapter, Innocent has escaped and he's on his way towards freedom. Thomas brought out the last of our supplies, food from the kitchen, and we stored it inside our bag we had made for the map and spices, along with some other items like a sparking rock to make fire, and some candles. We finally did our last check and decided it was time. I looked over at the house and standing on the front porch steps were Mama and Jesse. I guess everyone was too upset and sad to watch as we rounded the back of the barn. Odie and I looked at each other as to say, "Are you ready? And are you sure?" We both then nodded at each other and ran to the tree line. We were going away from the back way we had already checked. The first line of trees and brush, so we easily made it down to the small path that led to the northern part of the river. I could hear my heart beating, and it sounded like it was in my ears and not in my chest. I looked over at Odie, and he had the look of a hunter, like one who had spotted the prey. He had a smirk on his face. This made me feel a little better and gave me the confidence that we were going to make it. We were about 2 miles from Massah's place and saw a small creek that was almost without water. We easily made it across and headed north. About a mile north of the trees, we stopped and Odie pulled out our map. It showed that we were a good distance from the hunters of the runaway slave. I listened hard for sounds of their hunting dogs and screaming voices. It was silent. That made me feel good. Massah and his men would be too tired to start hunting for us. It would be some time before they knew they would have to go on another escape run, and by the time we should be out of range of their hunting dogs. We went about a half mile across a small creek where the mud was a little harder and water was slowly running along its bed. Odie looked back the way we came. He then told me to get one of the tree branches that was lying on the ground. He started brushing the ground with his branch, and I could see that he was sweeping away our tracks. I followed his plan. Once we had finished, we looked and saw no tracks or any sign that a person had come this way. Odie took out the spices from his sack and spread salt over our path. Then he told me to go to the edge of the creek. He brought a long branch and stuck it down into the water. We saw that it was only deep up to our knees. As we went across, Odie told me to go upstream as far as the water stayed at our knees. I had gone about 100 steps before the water started going over my knees and up to my waist. I watched Odie as he went up out of the water and noticed that as he touched the land, he began wiping at the ground. When I went up out of the water, I could see that he had wiped away any tracks that would show that someone had crossed at this location. He then told me to look at the ground at the water's edge. I could see limbs and brush. He said that we needed to place the same things at the spot where we came out of the water. And he then placed some salt and began placing the brush at the creek's edge. He said that we did not need to take any chances on being followed. I smiled inside, and my mind was glad that I was with Odie. His thinking made me feel good and safe. Now we were headed north. We were headed to freedom. We had gone about 2 to 3 miles, and Odie said we needed to rest here for a while. I agreed, but I was too jittery in my spirit to rest. I just wanted to keep going and going until I could see a glimpse of Canada. We took several sips of water, and Odie took out the map. We were going in the right direction, but it seemed a long way off. We had to first get out of these woods, run across this open field that stood at the base of the large hills, and then go right once we were over on the other side. We listened, but still no sounds from Massah's men and his dogs. Odie said that we would have about a day away from this creek by the time Massah found out about our escape, probably more. We rested for about 2 hours, and the sun was quickly going down. We had to get a lot further before the sun laid down to rest. We started north again and began moving faster. I did all I could to keep up with Odie, but I would never say slow north again and began moving faster. I was going to keep going now until I could see the opening. After about 2 hours, we heard some voices coming from our left side. We stopped and listened and found that the voices were far off. Maybe in all this quietness, the voices seemed closer than they were. They were coming from another direction away from Massah's place. We started moving even faster. We felt if it was not Master, it had to be some other evil man. And if they caught a glimpse of us, then they would become the new angry evil men. We started running. We must have run at least 5 miles, and my breath was trying to find some more air. Sweat was rolling down my face, and our clothes, the little we had on, were soaking wet. But the woods had become quiet again. It was so quiet that it scared me. Where were the sounds that the creatures make, those who call these woods home? Yeah, even Odie began to listen for natural sounds. Nothing could be heard. Odie said that we were going to stop here at this site and we need to find a lot of brush to hide under. The sun was down to the top of his head and we really needed to move fast. We would stay here and wait for the moon to lift his head. Again, we listened but for the sounds and heard none. I looked over at Odie and he was fast asleep. I tried to close my eyes but could not. I was thinking about my father and brother and how they died and still wonder what had happened to my grandmother. My mind then went back to the runaway boys and I started to see them being caught. I saw the men cutting off their legs. I grabbed some more limbs and brush and tried to make myself invisible and not make any sound like the creatures that live there. I listened hard and could only hear Odie's steady breathing. I then closed my eyes and slept. I hoped that while we were sleeping that no evil men would come and find us and tomorrow we would reach the edge of the open fields. Odie now was shaking me to wake up. It was almost full light and I could feel the wetness on my arm from the dew. He passed me a piece of bread and after we had finished, we started moving again. The woods now had the busy sounds of the birds. Sounds were coming from all directions, and if those sounds stayed on the birds, we would be okay. The area we were walking through was filled with fallen leaves and a lot of vines and bushes that were lined with sticky flowers. We had to take our time going through these bushes, and I knew that Master's dogs would have to go around and not take the same path we took. This would add more time to our escape. We finally reached the edge of the woods and could clearly see the ground that started to rise to the sky. There was the open field. It was a lot larger than we thought. On the drawings, it looked a lot smaller, and the hills looked like they went on forever. We could see what looked like a road, and Odie said we would wait for about an hour to see if anyone would come through. No one did, so we began to slowly run along the edge of the clearing towards the tree line that was at the end of the hills. We finally made it to the trees, but had to stop and get down on the ground very quickly. We could see what looked like two young boys from the size of them. They both had long guns and were carrying what looked like some small animals. They stopped and placed both guns on the ground and the animals. One of the boys started cutting on one of the animals. Then, out of the blue, we heard some yelling, and suddenly a wagon carrying several men came up beside the boys. They appeared to all have those long guns. Then the two boys got on the back of the wagon and they started coming our way. I almost panicked, but Odie whispered, "Don't make a sound or any kind of movement." We lay as stiff as we could with only the line of trees as our cover. The wagon came to about 400 yards from where we were and then turned towards the hills. I said to myself, oh no. We waited until they went around one of the smaller hills and headed into the line of trees and disappeared. Odie wiped his head. His entire body was covered with sweat. Me, I was no different. We waited, and when we felt like no one else was coming, we started to slowly run closer to the trees. This would give us cover. We came to the bottom of one of those smaller hills that led alongside the open field and again stopped and listened. Nothing. No sounds. We had only a couple of yards to go across the open field. We started running at a faster pace. The few hundred yards went quickly, and we were at the part of the path where the wagon had gone. Excuse me. Odie then took out our map, and we both looked at it like this was our only hope of survival. We would have to go up and over the next hill, which was standing very high against the first hill. The hill had some smaller trees that were not like the ones we had been through. These trees would be excellent cover for anyone who did not want to be seen. As we made our way up the path where the men had gone, we had to make another sudden stop. There they were. They had started a fire and were seemingly settling in for the rest of the day. This meant that we had to either stay in the tree line until we got a break or just run like crazy to the taller hill. We decided to stay put. We were safer here than we would be if we tried to run. We also could not see all the men that were on the wagon at the pad. I could see the two boys and one of the men, so where were the other men? Odie fixed a soft place for us, which was out of the sight of the men in their camp. We would have to be truly quiet this time. We could not make a fire in fear that the flames and smells of the burning wood would carry out over the line of trees and settle right where they were. The day was longer, it seems, and the moon was taking its time to come out. We sat down on the soft brush and took out the map. We went over the map to see if there was a route that would take us over the smaller hill and beside the path where the men had made their fire. We knew that if we stayed there the rest of the day and night, we would have to make a run for the small hill. We did not want to be trapped between these men and Massah's slave hunt. All that night, I thought about what we would do if found by these men. Would they be as evil as Massah and Samuel? Would they cut off our legs? I also knew that looking at the map, if we could just make it across the narrow opening, we would be able to see most of the tree line and open field. I only hoped that when we decided to run, that the men and the two boys would be gone. This was a restless night. Thank you.